This is the hidden history of the Seychelles and Mauritius Islands, how the US and the UK forcibly removed thousands of Chagosians from their homeland. 50 years later, we are finally learning about how the US and the UK forcibly removed Black communities from the Chagos Islands and forced them to relocate to the islands of the Seychelles and Mauritius. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Jojo and I'm always on the go. I like to use my love of travel to talk about politics, imperialism, and the US's terrible foreign policy. Like many of you, vacationing in the Seychelles is definitely on my bucket list. But before we book our tickets, let's take some time to learn about the history of some of the marginalized communities on the Seychelles Islands, as well as on the island of Mauritius. On the eastern coast of Central Africa, the biggest island you'll see is Madagascar. East of Madagascar is a small island of Mauritius, and north of those two are a collection of over 100 islands called the Seychelles. Now, further east of those is the collection of islands, the archipelago, whatever. This collection of islands called the Chagos Islands, which includes the islands of Diego Garcia, Perros Banjos, and Solomon Island. The languages of Mauritius, Seychelles, and the Chagos Islands is a mix of Creole, English, and French with heavy African influences. Now, colonizers have said that these islands were uninhabited when they were discovered by Europeans.
That's suspicious.
During the 1960s, the Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean were essentially a British colony. The British government had agreed to allow the US to build a military base on the island of Diego Garcia, which was at that time the largest inhabited island in the archipelago. Anyways, here's the thing. Most Chagossians are descendants of enslaved Africans who were brought to the Chagos Islands from the continent of Africa, including from the island of Madagascar. Chagossians were forced to work on coconut plantations overseen by British and French enslavers. But despite these horrific origins, Chagossians have managed to create a blossoming community with its own distinct music, culture, and Creole language. You kidnapped people from Africa, brought them to an island, had them live there enslaved for centuries. When they were finally free to create their own culture, you then displaced them into poverty.
Oh Lord. Again. A fucking again. Nothing new, nothing changed, same old shit.
From 1965 to 1973, the US and the UK, because remember, this is a UK colony, displaced thousands of Chagossians from the islands of Diego Garcia, Perros Banjos, and Solomon to make way for America's military industrial inferiority complex. The US specifically asked the UK for an uninhabited island, forcing those communities to live in the poverty and slums of Mauritius and the Seychelles in order to build a military research facility for the US.
That's weird.
Within 8 years, they removed the entire Chagossian population. In fact, they used the same coconut plantation owners that enslaved Chagossians in order to forcibly remove the communities from the island. And when people refuse to leave what has been their home for centuries, the US and the UK limited the amount of ships that would bring food and supplies to the island.
Wait a damn minute. Wait a damn minute.
They essentially starved people until they had no choice to leave. This displacement was happening completely in secret. The UK has only recently acknowledged the issue. The UK straight up lied and said that the islands had no permanent population, so that they wouldn't have to report their colonial rule to the United Nations.
Why you always lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God.
If that wasn't bad enough, listen to this. The US and the UK compensated the French and British enslavers, the coconut plantation owners, for their loss of revenue.
Let me just go in the bush and weep. Let me just go in the bush and weep. I just have to go in the bush and weep. Really. I don't understand. I swear to God, I don't understand.
For the Chagossians living on the island of Mauritius, the UK gave the government of Mauritius money in some sort of trickle-down economic strategy, and by the time it actually got to Chagossian people, it was not enough for them to restart their lives in Mauritius. And in exchange for these crumbs, the Chagossians who received this, can we even call it compensation, had to sign away their rights and in some cases put their thumbprint to say that they would never return to their homeland. Oh God. For the Chagossians who were exiled to the Seychelles Islands, they received no compensation. None. Zilch. Nada.
Well, just as I thought, trash.
Now, Chagossians are asking for reparations for their forced migration. Real reparations, not the pennies that they gave to the Mauritius government. And as a collective, especially Black people of the diaspora, the descendants of enslaved Africans all around the world, we need to push for reparations. We need to push for reparations from all of the colonizers. I'm talking UK, France, and even the USA. And just because I didn't name you doesn't mean I don't see you. I was disgusted to see so many Black people at the so-called King Chuck's coronation. That entire royal family owes a debt to me, to other Guyanese people, to the Chagossians, to the Jamaicans, to the Nigerians.
I'm leaving here with something.
We typically think of colonization as something that happened centuries ago, but they are still colonizing and displacing people, and the US is also an imperialist colonizer. Just a few months ago, Black people, a lot of y'all were Guyanese, I see you, were grieving a queen who was in power when the Chagossians were displaced.
Y'all be weak in the knees. Stand up! Stand up!
Colonization starts in the mind. We cannot literally afford to tap dance and shook and jive and sing Keys to the Kingdom and Negro spirituals.
Dear Coon, you have hereby been excommunicated from the African race, and we have rebirthed you into the European.
If you learned anything from this video, I beg you, please share this video with a friend or subscribe to my channel for more videos about travel, politics, imperialism, and everything in between. If all of those things are just too much work for you, then at least, at the bare minimum, please do not recognize a so-called king who would quite literally rape your community and steal your land. This happened 50 years ago. There are people alive today who experienced this.
Yeah.